Good morning, afternoon, or evening. So Hoyoverse has officially revealed what's going to be in the Jing Yuan banner, and honestly, it's pretty disgusting. So in this quick video, I wanted to briefly go over the characters and their eidolons, the feature of lightcones, and whether or not they're worth pulling. To start things off with the 5-star from the character banner, Jing Yuan is an AoE-focused Lightning Erudition character that summons a unit called the Lightning Lord. The Lightning Lord is uncontrollable and independent from your party, but its speed and the number of enemies it'll attack are based on how often Jing Yuan uses his skills between his turns. So essentially, Jing Yuan's game plan is to spam his abilities as quickly as possible so the Lightning Lord's follow-up attacks occur as often as possible. Jing Yuan is shaping up to be the strongest AoE unit in the game, and if that's something your account is lacking, he's definitely a worthwhile pull. I won't be going over his eidolon since he's not officially out yet, and most people will be stopping at one copy. But I do want to do a guide about him in the future, so subscribe to the channel if you want to be around to catch it. But now moving on to the 4-stars in the banner, Tingyun is an offensive harmony support that revolves around giving your damage dealers a status called Benediction. Benediction not only buffs her allies' attack, but also enhances her own basic attack as long as Benediction is active. She also has the highest base speed out of all the supports in the game, is skill point efficient, and is the only character whose ultimate gives energy to a targeted ally. In fact, for all these reasons, she's considered the strongest 4-star support in the game. Now in regards to her eidolons, her E1 gives the ally with Benediction a speed boost after they use their ultimate, essentially giving them an earlier next turn. Her E2 gives her buffed ally bonus energy when defeating an enemy, which is valuable as energy regen is a rare stat to come by. Her E3 buffs the damage bonus given by her ultimate and the lightning damage of her basic attack, which she uses quite often. Her E4 further increases the damage of the lightning attack her ally gets from her skill, which is good because, I mean, it's more damage. E5 buffs her skill and talent, two of the most integral parts in her kit. And finally, her E6 increases the energy gain on her already crazy ultimate. If you consider the fact that most ultimates cost 120 energy, it'll essentially be paying off half the cost. Now, all of Tingyun's eidolons are incredibly strong. She absolutely does not need eidolons to function, but pulling copies of her is an overall net positive regardless of the number of dupes. So in my honest opinion, she's the most valuable 4-star in the banner, and if you can get her, that's an insane benefit to your account. Next, we have Sushang, a fast physical DPS that excels at both breaking and damaging broken enemies. Her main source of damage is from a mechanic in her skill called Sword Stance, which has a small chance of triggering her enemies while being guaranteed to happen on weakness broken enemies. She has some of the highest physical breaking potential in the game with her ultimate, making her a valuable unit, especially if your account doesn't have Clara. In fact, she alone carried me through the Kafka fight in SU5. Now regarding her eidolons, her E1 refunds a skill point when using your skill on a broken enemy, which is insanely valuable as she's really skill point hungry. Honestly, I'm surprised this is an E1. Next, her E2 reduces the damage taken for a turn after Sword Stance occurs, which isn't too useful to her overall kit. Her E3 increases her ult and talent levels. Her E4 gives her a 40% break effect, which is a decent boost as she breaks enemies pretty often. E5 increases her skill and basic levels, two things she uses quite often in fights. And her E6 grants the speed boost Sushang's talent gives at the beginning of the fight and makes it stackable, potentially doubling the amount of speed that it gives. Now in regards to her eidolons, her E1 is a massive power spike, but until her E5, the value from duplicates is pretty underwhelming. While you don't need her eidolons to function, if you end up getting 2 copies of her, that's already a massive win. And if you ever need help building Sushang, I'm making a guide for her, and once that's out, the link to it will be in the description. Now on to the final character on the banner. March 7th is the preservation character we all got for free, so hopefully you already know what she does. But if you have been using her for some odd reason, she's one of the strongest shielders in the game with an ultimate that does AoE ice damage that can freeze enemies. Taking a look at her eidolons, her E1 gives her energy whenever her ult freezes a target, which is amazing as with high effect hit rate, something you'll be building on her anyways, you'll be getting your ultimate back mega fast. Her E2 grants her lowest health ally shield when the battle starts. This eidolon is pretty loaded, as it protects your squishiest ally, saves March her turn from having to shield them, and omits the taunt effect from her skill, something you really wouldn't want on your lowest health ally anyways. Her E3 buffs her ultimate and basic attack. Her E4 gives her an extra counter on her talent and gives it defense scaling. And now considering how her talent originally scales off her attack, something we don't build for her, this makes the damage from her talent actually noticeable. Her E5 buffs her skill and talent. And finally, her E6 heals her shielded allies based on their max HP, which is incredibly valuable as any HP damage taken is normally considered lost unless you have a dedicated healer. And while you might not notice the difference if you shielded a squishy DPS, because March normally wants to shield herself or a tankier ally like Fire MC, the 4% suddenly becomes a much bigger number. Now, pulling multiple copies of March will benefit your account a lot, as all of her eidolons synergize incredibly well with her general game flow. And also considering that she's the only 4-star dedicated shielder in the whole game, making her stronger is a pretty worthwhile investment. So overall, in my opinion, the 4-stars and their eidolons in this banner will return the value of any jade you spend for Jing Yuan, even if you end up losing the 50-50. So big thumbs up for me. But moving on to the weapon banner, this is where it gets really interesting. Now starting off with Jing Yuan's signature light cone, Before the Dawn is probably the most broken light cone in the whole game. Like seriously, read the first 2 effects. At S1, the wearer's crit damage is increased by 36%. The wearer's skill and ultimate damage are increased by 18%. Now, just for those two first effects alone, I'm not sure what Hoyoverse was thinking. You can literally put those on any light cone and then it's suddenly goated. But of course, to make sure it has an Erudition theme, after the wearer uses their skill or ultimate, they gain Somnus Corpus, which is then consumed when a follow-up attack is triggered, buffing its damage by 48%. And to put that into perspective, that bonus is as much as Birth Itself's damage buff at S5. Considering that Jing Yuan's Lightning Lord attacks are all follow-ups and that he'll be using his skills to buff the Lord before it attacks, this light cone will provide an insane power spike to Jing Yuan. But honestly, just by looking at the raw stats alone, you could give this to almost any Erudition character. The exception being Qingque, as her follow-up is RNG based and her skill doesn't actually do damage. But seriously, even your Herta will be doing more damage with this equipped. Now starting off with the featured 4-star Harmony Light Cone, we have Planetary Rendezvous, Asta's signature Light Cone, as Tingyun's is already in the Battle Pass. This cone provides a damage boost if there is an ally with the same damage type as the wearer in the party, and although it limits your party's build as you match the supports and DPS's elements, it still provides a solid and persistent damage boost. And considering that Tingyun and Jing Yuan are both lightning typed, it fits the theme of the banner if you end up pulling both. Next is one of March's signature light cones, Day 1 of My New Life, which gives an impressive amount of defense to the wearer and increases your ally's damage resistance. This light cone is actually really good in all preservation characters as they scale off of defense, and is honestly one of the best preservation light cones in the game. And finally, for the Hunt Light Cone, Only Silence Remains is the best Hunt Light Cone for general use, for its decent attack boost and easy to meet requirement for the bonus crit rate. Curiously enough, unlike Tingyun, whose light cone is in the battle pass, Hoyoverse isn't featuring Sushang's light cone swordplay, which has a persistent stacking damage bonus as long as you don't switch targets. I'll forgive Hoyoverse though, as honestly, this banner is already too good. Personally, this is the banner I'm dumping all my leftover Jade into. But in summary, both the character and weapon banners are very valuable. If you're not broke from pulling on the Seele banner, then the only consideration you need to make is whether or not you want to save for Silver Wolf, a quantum nihility unit that implants weaknesses in enemies, and Lord Sha, an attack scaling imaginary healer that's going to give Natasha and Bailu a run for their money. But that's all from me. Thanks for sticking around, and good luck on your pools.